Hello everyone, I'm Frank and welcome to Frank Puzzles, and this is today's hard level puzzle, and it's called Campground by Orp, and here are the rules. Normal 9x9 Sudoku rules apply. Place the digits 1 through 9 exactly once in every row, column, and 3x3 box. Tents, aka camping. Trees represented by the digit 9 are determined by the solver. A clue given outside the grid represents the sum of the digits in tent cells in the corresponding row or column. Okay, pair each tree, digit 9, in the grid with a tent, which occupies an orthogonally adjacent cell. Tents may not touch one another, not even diagonally. Okay. Some cells are surrounded by dotted lines, called lakes. Tents and trees cannot be in a lake cell. Okay. Okay, so clues given outside the grid represent the sum of the digit in tent cells in the corresponding row or column. So this is saying that there is a 2 in a tent cell here. And tent cells can only be adjacent, must be orthogonally adjacent to a tree. And a tree, which is a digit 9, always you must pair each tree with a tent. So every 9, which is a tree, has a tent next to it, which must be another digit, which is orthogonally adjacent, which just means sharing an edge with another cell. So say this was a 9 and this was a 2, and this was the tent orthogonally adjacent to, which means sharing an edge with this tree. And every tree, you must pair each tree in the grid with a tent. And tents may not touch one another, not even diagonally. So you cannot have a tent, say, here, along with this tree. Actually, let's make the tree green. So we'll make the tree green. I guess we make the tent yellow. I don't know. You cannot have another tent here. You can't actually have another tent here either, right? You pair each tree with a tent, with a single tent. And tent may not touch one another, not even diagonally. So you couldn't have, say, like a tent here and a tent here, because that's not allowed, even if the 9 were here, right? But each 9 in the grid, which is a tree, must pair with a tent. And the tent must be orthogonally adjacent to that tree, which just means sharing an edge. So this is not possible, but you could have something like, I don't know, here, right? And the digit or the number outside of the grids must be the sum of all digits in tents in the respective column, row. So in this row, this works because the sum of the digits in tents adds up to 2, right? And that's how tents work with the sums outside. We also have lakes, where digits cannot repeat in a lake, and the digits in the lake sum to the value in the top left if given. So that basically is a typical killer cage Sudoku. So the lakes act like killer cages. So these 2 digits must add up to 5. These 6 digits must add up to 23. These 3 digits must add up to 8, etc., etc. So as an invalid example, we could have something like this being a 2 and this being a 3. But tents and trees cannot be in a lake cell. So all the trees, which are 9s, cannot be in lake cells either. And those are all the rules. If you'd like to play along, there's going to be a link in the description. And now I'm going to get started. Let's go. Okay, so we know this adds up to 4. So and these two digits add up to 5. So it cannot be 1, 4. It has to be 2 and 3. But we know in row 1, 2 has to be in a tent. And the tent can never be on a lake. So this has to be 3. This is 2. Which means the tent is not here. So this cannot be a tent. We're going to mark those as, I don't know, gray, I guess. The tent could be any of these, though. The tent cannot be here, though. If the tent were here, then it would also have... well, it could be 2 and 1. So actually, the tent could be here. Never mind. These digits must add up to 5. So it's 1, 4, or 2, 3. But this can't be 2, so this can't be 3. We have a 1 through 5 here. And one of these digits must be a 1. This is 4 digits adding up to 25, but you cannot have a 9 in it because 9 can never be in a lake. So we know that's at maximum, it's 5, 6, 7, 8 then, which adds up to 26, which is 1 away from what this sum is. So then this sum must be 4, 6, 7, 8 because there's no other possibility without a 9, right? So this is 4, 6, 7, 8, adds up to 21 plus 4, which is 25. So this can't be 4. One of these 3 digits is a 4 here. Digits cannot repeat on a lake. Okay, where are the 10? Where are the... actually, we don't know. This cannot be 3, because if this were 3... well, actually, that's not true. Either this... This is 6 digits adding up to 23. The lowest 6 digits would be 21, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 adds up to 21. So this is specifically either 1, 2, 3... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, which adds up to 23, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, adding up to 23. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 as possibilities. But we know 1, 2, 3, 4 all have to be in these cells. So this can't be 4, obviously. So one of these digits is a 4. Huh. Okay, so this can't be a 2, therefore it cannot be a tent or tree. Trees we're gonna mark in green. The tree has to be one of these 4. Okay, so we know there's a 2 somewhere along here, which is a tent. This actually could be a 2, which would force a 1 potentially be on the tent, but this cannot be 1 here. So this is 2 through 9. Because it sees all 3 digits in this 8 cage. This 4 is either a 4 or it's the sum of 1 and 3, right? We know there's a 4 here. There's a 4 in one of these 5 cells. This cell has to be one of these 4, but we're not sure which. Huh. 14. You could have 2 digits, a 6 and an 8. You need to have 2 digits for 14, though, at least. Oh, that's actually interesting. You need, right, so therefore you have 9 in total tents, right? Because each tent is paired with a tree. So you have 9 in total, and they could be, one of them at least is a 2. The other one is either 3 or 1. We also have another 3 or 1. But we have a lot of 14s and 4. We have a lot of 14s. So that means 2 out of these 5 must be tents. 2 out of these 8 must be tents. 2 out of these 7 must be tents. And 2 out of these, all 9 of these, could be tents. So the question is, where could the tents be, right? Hmm. So this is at least 2, this is at least 2, and this is at least 2. This is at least 1. So that now there, it's a total of at least 7. 7 tents are in, there are at least 7 tents in columns 1, columns 3, column 6, and column 8. Uh, if there are 2 tents, it's specifically 6 and 8 and 6 and 8, right? Um, hmm. Hmm. The remaining digits are here, right? So there are 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. This can't be a 9, though, because it can't be a tree. Actually, this could be a tree. Hmm. It cannot be a tent. So I don't know what we make that then. It could be a tree, though, because it could be a tree down to here. Hmm. So in these 2 columns, that requires tents from at least the 4 out of 5 of these columns, right? So we could have at most one other tent in these 5 columns outside of. And if it's. Yeah. Um. Tents cannot touch one another. Oh. So where are the tents in row 4? It cannot be both here. So there has to be a tent in one of these 3 cells. It could be a tent here and a tent here, maybe. But that would require the 9 being here and the 9 being here, or the 9 being here and then the 9 being one of those 2 spots. So one of these cells at least is a tent, but we're not sure which. You could have a tent here. That's possible. Oh, I guess, okay. Instead of saying that the tents are in these 5 columns, the trees the tents are attached to have to be in these 5 columns, right? Because the tents are actually, there's 4 tents in these 2 columns specifically. Um, hmm. Tents may not touch one another, not even diagonally. Oh. Huh. Okay. That's interesting. So if this were 3 here, what would that mean? So this is 3. Um, one of these 3 would have to be a tent, but it cannot be either of these 2. So therefore, this would be a tent. You'd have to have a 1 somewhere being a tent. One of these 2 would be a tent, so neither of these could be a tent. You could potentially have a tent here, though. So one of these, this would obviously be a 3. Um, okay. This 3 would be next to a tent, so one of these 2 would be a 9. So therefore, this would be a 9, which would be attached to that tent, and the 9 would have to be one of these 2. And then one of these 2 would be a tent. So it would be next to a 9. And the 9 could not be here. It would have to be here, if that's the case. So this is just actually this doesn't even have to be a 3. So we're just asking if this is a tent. Okay, so non-tents we're gonna make red, I guess. Or orange? I don't know. We're gonna make it orange. So this cannot be a tent, obviously. Cannot be a 2, but it could actually be a tree. This, if we make that a tent, the other tent in row 4 has to be here because we need 2 tents in row 4, and this cannot be both tents. So this one would be a tent. 9 would have to be one of these 2. You'd have then this tent would have to be attached to the 9 that's outside. So this would be a 9. This could not be 9. One of these 2 would have to be a tent. So therefore it would be attached to a 9 here, which means this would not be 9. This would have to be a 9. And we need one more because this was a 3 or 1. So this would have to be a tent. It would be a 1 or 3. It would be attached to a 9 here. Because that's the only place for it. So far this is okay. This is 1 or 3. This is 1 or 3. One of these would be, it's attached to a 9 here. This would be 1 or 3, so therefore there would have to be 3 other tents here. This all seems fine. Okay, where can a tent not be then? Well, one of these 3 has to have a tent. One of these 2 has to have a tent. This cell sees all 3. Okay, this none of actually that's not guaranteed. This cannot be a tent because it sees, but one of these 3 does have to have a tent. So this can never be a tent here because the tents cannot be touching, not even diagonally. This could potentially be a tent. This cannot be a tent either for the same reasoning. If you have 2 tents here, where else could tents be? One thing you can never have is a 9 and a 9 next to even diagonally connect. Well, you could have it because it could go, yeah, here and then here. That's possible. Never mind. Say this were a tent. That's interesting. That means this is at most 3 in value as a tent. So you need at least 2 other digits so to be in tents. So this would have to be a tent then also. One of these 2 would have to be a tent. So the 9s would be one of these 3 and one of these 3 would be 9s. One of them would have to be one of these 3. The other one would have to be here. And then we have another one. These would be tents. One of these would have to be a tent, which means a 9 would have to be here, which means this could not be 9. And this would have to be a 9 then. One of these two would be a 9. You'd have a tent here. So neither of these could be a tent. You could, if you had a tent here, the 9 would have to be here or here, which is eliminated by the 9 being here. So this doesn't work. If you had a tent here, the problem is 4 cannot be here because you need a 1, 2, 3, 4, but 4 can't be here in this 23 cage. So the 4 would be here, which means this could not be 4, and therefore this cannot be a tent. Okay. So this can't be a tent either. If this is a tent, we don't have any restrictions there as much. If this is a tent, so say this was a tent, and one of these two is a tent. We know 9 is one of these 4 digits. And 9 would be one of these or one of these. We're not sure which. So this actually could be a tent. Oh, none of these could be tents. None of these could be tents. If either of these are solo tents. Okay, yeah, we know. Okay, so we know since this can't be a tent, there cannot be 2 tents here. So one of the tents has to be here. One of the tents has to be here. Right? Because of that, this can never be a tent, and this can never be a tent. So these are precluded from being tents because one of these two must be a tent. This is precluded from being a tent. Same here. If either one of these is a tent, it cannot be the solo tent because 4 is not possible here, and 4 is not possible here. And this can't be 4 because of this possibly being a 4. So one of these two is a tent, but cannot be the solo tent. Therefore, this must be a tent. So this is a tent, which means none of these are tents here, which forces this to be a tent. Therefore, this tent must be next to a 9. So one of these two is a 9. This tent can never be next to a 9 here. It must be next to a 9 here. So none of these are 9. So this is a 9 and is a tree. One of these is next to a 9. So this has to be not... One of these two is a 9. Or I guess it could be here too, actually. One of these 4 is a 9, right? So it could be any of these. Ooh. Hold up. Okay, does my logic still actually work there? I just realized that doesn't actually work necessarily. If this is, so this is at least a 3. This could be a tent. One of these is a tent. Which does require, okay, so we have to have a 9 in 2 out of, so if this is a 9, if this is a tent, this is at most 3, which means the other tents in the row must add up to 11. So it must be 2 tents. So one of these, this is a tent then, and one of these must be a tent. Because you can't have both here. Again, you can't have one here. It must be here in one of these two. Well, this tent requires 3 digits, 3 9s around it. One of the 9s, one of the cells orthogonally adjacent to it to be a 9. Same with this, and it have to be different 9s because you have to pair each tent with a tree. So there are 2 9s in these 3 rows, and one of these 2 cells must have a 9. So there cannot be a 9 in the rest of the row. Well, this can't be a tent. These can't be tents. One of these 2 must be a tent, but neither of them can be 4. So therefore, this is a contradiction. So this can never be a tent. One of these 2 must be a tent. One of these 2 must be a tent. Again, so these 2 cannot be tents. because they can't be next to other tents, and they would be next to one of these tents, which has to be a tent, and same here. These can't be tents, and these can't be tents, because they would be next to those other tents. If this were the solo tent, it could not be 4, because this is at maximum 3 for values in the tents. And this can't be a 4, and this can't be a 4. So you need to you need one of these to be a tent and one of these to be a tent, and therefore this is a tent, which means one of these is a 9. This is a tent because that's the only place for it in row 4 in these 3 cells to have a tent, and therefore none of these could be a 9 because one of these 2 is a 9 in a tree. So none of these can be tents or trees. This then has to be a 9. So this is a tree, which means none of these. This is connected to here. So there cannot be... There's no other... These cannot connect to a tree, so none of them can be tents, and they can't be trees. This one, if it were connected to a 9, the problem is this is already connected to that 9. So this cannot be a tree or a 9. This cannot be a tree or a 9. This can't connect to any 9 possible, so this is not a tree. This could be. We're not sure. So this is a tent, and it must be 6 or 8 because you only have 6 and 8 possible to add up to 14 with 2 digits, unique digits. So this is 6 or 8. This has to be 1 or 3 here. And one of these is a tree, sorry, a tent. This is not a tent, but it could be a tree. So we're making that orange. These are orange. There cannot be another tree here, but there could be another tent. Okay. This cannot be a tree or tent. This could be a tent as long as the 9 is here. We have a tent here. 9 cannot be here. So this can't be either a tree or a tent. One of these 2 is a tree or tent, and it's next to another 9. So one of these 4 is a 9. One of these 3 is a 9. I guess this still could be a tent here. One of these 4 is 9, one of these 2 is 9, which means 9 cannot be in the remaining cells here, so this must be a 9. If there were a tent here, it could not be part of... There's no 9 to be part of here. There's no 9 to be part of here, so this cannot be the tent then, which means this has to be a tent, and it must be connected to this 9. So this is a 9, which makes this a tree. This is 1 or 3. Since this is 1 or 3, and we need 1, 2, 3, and 4 in this cage, this digit then has to be the remaining 1 and 3. It has to be the same as this one. So the remaining digits here in these 6 cells must contain 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this has to be 5, 6, 7, or 8. And these are not trees. This is not a tree and cannot be part of a tent. It can't be a tent. This can't be a tent anymore because it doesn't have a 9 to be attached to. This actually could be part of a tent. We don't know. This is 1 or 3. This is 1 or 3. So these 2 digits are the same. This is, we'll mark that as an A. That is the same as that one. This is different. This must be B. And it must be one of these 3 digits. Okay, we have a 1, 3, 1, 3 pair in row 5, which eliminates 1 and 3 in the rest of the rows. So this can't be 1 or 3. So this is either 5, 8, or 6, 7. And this is either 5, 8, or 6, 7 here. Well, we're going to have a 6-8 pair here. So that eliminates 6 and 8 from the rest of the row. So 6 or 8 has to be in one of those 4 cells here. The 9 could be any of these cells. So we know there's a 6 or 8 here. So the rest of the row cannot contain a 6 or 8. So this can't be 6 or 8. These both see A and B. So it cannot be 1 or 3. So then we have what? 2, 4, 5, 7, and 9. Because we can't have 6, 8 because one of the 6 or 8s is here. And both 1, 3s are here. This can't be 9. So it's 2, 4, 5, 7. It's a possibility there. This is a 1 or 3 in column 6. So we have 2 other ones that are tenths in column 6, which means we account for all the 9s then, right? Okay. Where is a tenth in column 6? Can you have 2 of them here? You can't have 2 here because they would be next to each other. So one of them at least has to be here. But can you have 2 here, right? And the only way to have 2 would be 1 here and 1 here. But this could only attach to a 9. Actually, it can't attach to any 9. So this can never be a tenth, which means we have one of them here and one of them here. So this accounts for 3 tenths, which requires 3 9s in the surrounding columns. So therefore, these 9s are accounted for. So these 2 digits must account for the 9s in this column and the 9s in this column. And therefore, this is also 6 or 8. Because we only have 2 digits here, adding up to 14. And it must be 6 and 8 because those are the only 2 unique digits without a 9 that can add up to 14. And therefore, since one of them is 6 or 8, I mean, I guess you could have a 6 or 8 here and then a 6 or 8 somewhere here and then a 6 or 8 here. So one of these 2 is a tenth. So okay, so there cannot be a tenth here. There cannot be a tenth here. There cannot be a tenth any of these 2 cells or these 2. Actually, there can't be a tenth here either because it's not connected to a 9 that is available. This is similar. Okay, so none of these can be tenths, essentially. Actually, none of these can be tenths either. So this is not a tenth and it's not a tree. So these are not tenths and not trees. This could be a tenth. Okay, so no, this can't be a tenth. Right. This can't be a tenth because we need 2 tenths here in column 8. We need 3 tenths in column 6, and that takes up all the tenths possible in columns 5 through 9. So this does have to be a tenth. This is a tenth, and it's a 6 or 8. This has to be 2, 4, 5, 7, 9. This tenth is next to one of these, so this cannot be 9. And therefore, this can't be a tenth or a or tree. Since this can't be either, we know the tenths in this add up to 14. It must be 6 and 8. So any non-tenths cannot be a 6 or an 8. So this can't be 6 or 8. This can't be 6 or 8. This could be a tenth here. That's possible. You could have a tent. Okay, so all the tents are taken into account in columns 5 through 9. Can you ever have a 2 as a tent to add up to 14? It would require the tents to be 2, 3, and 9 at maximum, and 9 can never be on a tent. So this cannot be a tent here. So the tent has to be one of these 2 digits here. Well, if the 2 is here, then 9 has to be here. If the 2 is here, then 9 still has to be one of these 2. So one of these 2 digits is a 9, which means you cannot have a 9 in the rest of the box, and you can't have a 9 in the rest of the row. So this can't be 9. Therefore, this is not a tent and not a tree. Where is the tent then in? We need one tent in one of these 3 cells, so it has to be here, which means it cannot have a 9 in any of these 3 cells, so this must be a 9 here. Which means this cannot be 9, and it can't have a tent attached to it anymore, so this is not allowed. This is not allowed either, so neither of these are tents or trees. These can't be tents or trees. This can't be a tent or tree. This cannot be a tent, but any of these 2 could be a tent. Because if this were 2, it would require 9 to be in columns. Oh, this is a 9, which means where is the 9 that the tent has to be next to in the final version of final column 6? Cannot be here. Therefore, this is the tent, which means it must be next to a 9 here. So this is a 9 and a tree. This is a tree. This cannot be a 9, which forces this to be a 9 here. Oh, I guess the 2 could be here. Yeah. This actually could be a tree. So, sorry, not a tree, a tent. This is a tree. The 2 just has to be one of these 2, right? Again, you can't have a 2 here. So the 2 was one of these 3. And either way, the 9 had to be essentially one of these. But we already had the 9s accounted for in columns 5 through 9. So the 9 has to be here for the 2 to be a next to. So one of these is 2. We're not sure which. We have 3 digits adding up to 14. We're not sure what that is. So this is 2. This is a tent. 9 cannot be here. This cannot be tree or tent. This cannot be tree or tent. This can't be tent. So if this is a tent, 9 would have to be here. If this is a tent, 9 could be either of these spaces. If this is a tent, 9 could be either of these. If this is a tent, if this is a... Nah, it cannot go here. So the 9 has to be one of these 4 also still. And this cannot be a tent then. I guess it could be. You go up to here, right? This cannot be a tent or a tree. If this were a tent, so this can't be tree or tent because the 9 cannot be here. This could be a tent, though, going that way. Okay, this is a tent. It's at most a 7. Can it be 1 or 3? No, because then this would add up to 4 for these 2 cells. So you'd have a 4, and then this would be 10, which is not possible. You can't have a 2 for the same reason. So this could be 4, 5, 6, or 7. You can't have a 1, 3 here for the same reasoning. If this is 1, 7, this would have to be 6 if that's the case. 1, 6, and 7. 1, 5, and 8. 1, 4 doesn't add up to anything because a 9 cannot be in the tens. If this is 3, 3, 4, and 7 add up to 14. 3, 5, and 6 add up to 14. 3, 6, and 5 add up to 14. And 3, 7, and 4 add up to 14. So those are all possible. But this cannot be a 4 because we know one of these 3 digits must be a 4. Okay. Therefore, this can't be... It still could be 8. This is 5, 6, or 7. This cannot be a... this cannot be a tent because this 5, 6, or 7 would force this to be 2 at most. And we know there's only 2 tents here to equate to the 2 trees that are available. So this cannot be a tree or a tent, so that's not either. If this were a tent, it would be next to a 9, but neither of these can be 9, so this cannot be a tent or tree. This could be... No. None of these can connect to a 9 here. So neither of these can be a tree or tent because it doesn't have a 9 to attach to. None of these could be 9. So these are not tents or trees. Any of these 3 could be a tent. This can't be a tent because it would be, these 2 cannot be 9. So this is not possible to be a tent or a tree. These could be tents. This could be a tent. This can't be 9. Nine cannot be here. 9 cannot be here. So this can never be a tree or a tent. So 9 is one of these 2 digits here, which means this cannot be 9. So 9 has to be one of these 2 digits here. This could be next to... Okay, so any of these 3 still could be tents. The tent could be here as long as the 9's there. But then this would be 2 and this would be 1. And we would need another tent here. Okay. So that's possible then. If this is 2 and this would be 2, 1, 3. So what are the possibilities for tents? Tent could be here with that being 9. Therefore, you would need another tent here, if that's the case. Tent could be here with that being 9, and then this would be 2. This would be 5. Can you have a tent here and a tent here? No. Okay, that's actually very interesting. Therefore, I think this has to be a tent, right? I guess you could have a tent here, and that could be 8. Huh. What are the implications, though? Okay, so you have nines here. Nine's one of these two. Nine's one of these two. So this cannot be a tent or a tree. These all actually could be tents. If this is a tent. Oh, that's interesting. Hmm. The implications are very interesting there. Anyways, can you ever have a 4 actually be the remaining tent here? If this is 4, I guess you could have 3 tents, but then it would be 1 and 3 required to be the other tents. This can never be 4 because 2 is the max. If this is a 4, that requires a 1 and a 3 to be the other tents, and this is not allowed to be 1 or 3, and obvious this would have to be 2. It could not be 3 here by itself, because then it would not add up to 3. So this can never be 4. Therefore, this is always 8, which makes this a 6. Therefore, we always have... Okay, so this can't be 6 or 8. We have a 1, 5, 7 triplet, actually, in box 3, which eliminates 1, 5, and 7 in the rest of the box. So this can't... And the rest of the column. So this can't be... Actually, it still technically could be. This cannot be 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. So this is 2, 3, or 4. One of these 3 is an 8. We're not sure which. This can no longer be 2 and 6 here. So if this were a tent, it would be 2, and therefore that would be 6, but we'd have 2 6s here. So this cannot be the tent then. This cannot be the tent because it requires it to be 2 at least. So one of these 2 is a tent. It's not. This is not gray. This is not a tent. Which means this has to be the tent. This cannot be the tent or the tree. So this is a 2. So we have 2 and 8 adding up to 10. This could never have been 1 and 3 adding up with 6 because this could never be 1 or 3. Hmm. If... So this could be 8. This could be 8, or this could be 8. We're not sure which. Hmm. Hmm. This could still be a tent here. So either one of these 3 is a tent. If either of these are a tent, this would have to be a 2. This could be 1 or 2 here. So this could still be 5, 6, or 7. If the tent is here, this is 8, which would force one of these 2 to be a tent and to be an 8. But we're not restricted necessarily to that, right? Mm. let's say this was a tent. Then that forces this to be 8, which means this is an 8. And then neither of these can be tents then. So 8 cannot be here as a tent. So one of these two is a tent, which means this has to be the 9. So this is 9 and is therefore a tree. So this is not a tree and not a 9, and therefore can't be a tent. This can't be a tent or a 9 anymore. So this is neither, which forces this to be 9. This makes that a 9, which makes that a 9. This can't be 9, so this must be a 9 now. So this can't be 9, and none of these can be 9. These are not orange, they are the trees. So we have all the trees now. This is neither, because it can't be a tent. This can't is neither, because it can't be a tent. So 6 is here. What are the remain? This is 2, 3, or 4, but it cannot be 3 because of the 1, 3 pair in the row. This is 2, 3, 4, and 8. This is 2, 3, 4, or 8. This cannot be 9. It cannot be 4, 6, 7, or 8 because they sees all these digits in this cage. Therefore, it's 1, 2, 3, or 5. We're not sure which. A tent is either here or here. If a tent is here, this is 8, which makes that an 8. And therefore, this would be a 7. You could have 1, 6, 7, or 3, 4, 7. If this were a tent, this would then be 2, 1. This would be 3. This would have to be 5, and this would be 6. That seems okay. This would then be 1, 3, 4. That seems okay also. Okay. Oh, 8 has to be either here or here, so this cannot be 8, which means one of these 3 digits is an 8. That's not that helpful, though, but something. Hmm. Where are the... Okay. No, that's not true. This digit has to be one of these 3 digits here, but we don't know which. It can't, because it's a 5, 6, 7, 8, which means this cannot be that digit. It has to be one of these 3 digits for column 4. Because it can't be any of these digits, can't be any of these digits, it must be one of those digits. But we don't know which one is the question. let's see. Okay, what are the remaining digits? Okay. I don't think this can ever be 3. Oh, I guess it could be 3, 4, 1, maybe. If, oh, that's interesting. If this is a tent, it's a 2. If it's not a tent, this has to be a tent, which has to be an 8 tent. So this can never be 8, which means 8 in box 7 can never be here. It has to be one of these two digits. Well, where is the 8 then in column 1? It has to be one of these two digits. Okay. Oh, interesting. If this is a tent and 8, that means this is a solo tent and it's a 7. This is an 8 tent here. So this 7 means this cannot be 8. It would have to be a 7, right? Similarly, if this were a 2, this could not be an 8 anymore. So this would have to be an 8. One of these two digits is an 8. But if this is an 8, this is a tent, which forces this to be a 7 as the sole tent in row 9, which means where is the 7 in this cage? It must be here. And if this is not an 8, this is a tent. This must be an 8 as a tent, because there must be a tent adding up to 8 at least in row 8, which means this can't be 8. So this can't be 8 either way, which means in this cage, the 8 has to be one of these two cells. So therefore, there is an 8 in columns 5 and 6. In box 2, where is the 8? It has to be in columns 5 and 6, which eliminates 8 from being in columns 5 and 6 in the rest of the columns. So these cannot be 8 here. Therefore, 8 is one of these two digits. So 5 cannot be in either of them, because if 5 were there, the 8 would not be able to be in the corresponding set. Um, hmm. Um, oh, interesting. Okay. Hmm. Okay, what are the remaining digits here? They are it could be 1 through 5 and 7 here. The remaining digits in this cell are 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the remaining digits in this cell are 1 through 7. So it's still pretty broad. What about the digits in column? Ah, Where are these two digits in box 8? If it's a 2 and a 3, there's no way it could be in any of the, both of those digits can be in these cells. So this has to be a 1-4 pair. So this is a 1-4 pair. The 4 has to be here. Therefore, where is the 1? The 1 has to be here, which means this can't be 1. This can't be 1. This is now a 3, which makes that a 1. So it requires another digit to be a tenth in column 1. Therefore, this is a tenth and it's a 2. And this can no longer be 1, 2, and 5 because it sees all the 2 sees all the digits. Therefore, this is a 1 and this is a 3, 4 pair. So this cannot be 2 or 4 anymore. The remaining digits here are 5, 6, 7, and 8. Well, where are the 6 and 8? They can't be here. They have to be these digits. So this is a 6, 8 pair. This is a 5, 7 pair. This is a 1. This is a 2. This cannot be a tenth. Therefore, this is a tenth and is an 8, which means this can't be a tenth. It's nothing else. Can't be an 8. This and all the tenths are satisfied. This has to be a 5 now to add up to 7. This can't be a 5. There's no 1 or 4 here. There's no 4 here. These 3 digits add up to 14. These add up to 8, so this must be a 6 here. There's no 3, 5, or 1 in the remaining column, or 6. No 1, 3, 5, or 6. So this is a 2, which means this can't be 2. This 3 has to be the same as that 3, so this is a 3. None of these can be 3. Where is the 1 in row 4? It has to be here. So this is a 1. This is a 1-4 pair. 4 has to be here. 3-4 pair here. Where is the 2 in column 7? Can't be any of these cells because of that 2. Can't be here because the 2 in column 8 cannot be here. It has to be one of these 2 digits. So this can't be a 2. Can't be here because of that 2. It must be here. So this is a 2. This can't be 4. This, one of these 2 digits is a 4. We're not sure which. This can't be an 8 anymore. Where is the 8 in box 7? It has to be here. 8 has to be one of these 2. 8 is one of these 2. 8 can be one of these 4. Actually, one of these 3. The remaining digits in row 3 are 1 through 5 and 7. But this can't be 1 or 4. This can't be 2 or 1. Okay. That seems fine. Where is the 2 remaining in box 8? Cannot be here, cannot be here, can't be here. It must be here. So this is a 2, which means neither of these are 2. We have a 5, 7, 5, 7 pair in row 4, which eliminates 5 and 7 from the rest of the row. This can't be 7, this can't be 5 or 7. We also know out of this 23 cage, adding up, it's either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, or 6, 7. So 5 and 7 cannot be in the rest of this cage because one of the 5 or 7s is here. And the other one cannot be the other 5 or 7. So this is 5 or 7. This cannot be 3 because of the 3 in the box. So this is a 2, 4, 2, 4 pair, which eliminates 2 and 4 in the rest of the column. So this can't be 4. This is a 3. We now know... Where's the 3 in row 7? It must be one of these two digits. Well, then where is the 3 in row 8? Cannot be any of these because one of these two must be a 3. Can't be here because this can't be a 3 because of that 3. It must be here. So this is a 3. And the last remaining digit is a 6 or a 7, which matches that. So we're going to make that now the A. And it must go to one of these two digits. We're not sure which. This can't be a 6 because of this 6. Therefore, this must be 8, which makes that a 6. Remaining digits in row 1 are 1, 5, 7, and 8. But this can't be 1 because of this one. This can't be 1 because of this one. Where is the possible 1? It has to be here. So this is 1, which means these can't be 1. We now have a 5, 7, 5, 7 pair in row 3, which eliminates 5 and 7 in the rest of the row. This can't be 5 or 7, so it's a 2. This can't be 5, 7, or 2 now, so this must be a 3. This can't be 3, 5, or 7, so it's a 4, which makes this a 2, which makes this a 4. This still requires a 2 in this cage, so this is a 2. This can't be 4. So one of these two is 4. Also, this is a 6 or 7. So now these two digits must add up to 23 with 1, 2, 3, and 4. So they must add up to 13. If this is 6 and 7, that would eliminate all possibilities for that cell. So this can't be 6 or 7. This must be 5, which makes this an 8. This is 6 or 7, and this is 6 or 7, but we're not sure which is which. This has to be the A, and I guess we'll label this B then. So this is 8. This can't be 2 because of this 2, so this must be a 4, which makes that a 2. Remaining digits in row 5 are 5, 6, and 7. But 6 cannot be either of these digits, so this must be a 6, which makes this a 5, 7 pair here. Oops. A 5, 7 pair. That leaves the rest of box 6 to be 1 and 8. So this is 1 and 8, this is 1 and 8. What are the remaining digits in row? This 5 means this can't be 5, so this is 7, which makes that a 5, which makes that 7, which makes that a 5. This 4 means this can't be 4, so this is 1, which makes that a 4. 1 can no longer be here in box 1, so this must be a 1. The remaining digits in box 1 are 3 and 7, but this can't be 3 because of that 3, so this is 7, which makes that a 3. This 7 means this can't be 7, so this is 8, which makes that a 7. This 7 means these can't be 7, so these must be 6s each, which makes that a 7, which makes that a 6. This has to be 4 and 8. Well, where's the 8? The 8 can only be here, which makes that a 4. The remaining two digits in column 5 are 5 and 7, but this can't be 7, so this is a 5 and this is a 7. Remaining digits in row 6 have to be 3, 4, and 5, but this can't be 3 or 4 because of this 3, 4, so this must be 5. This then is a 3, 4. Remaining digit here is a 6 in column 2. Remaining digits in row 7 are 3, 4, and 5. So this could be 3, 4, 5. This could be 4, 5. Remaining digits in row 8 are 5 and 7. And we have a 5, 7, 5, 7 pair in column 9, which eliminates 5 and 7 in the rest of the column. Therefore, this can't be 5. This is 4, which makes this a 3, which makes that 4, which makes that 3. These 3 and 4 forces this to be a 5, which makes that 7, which makes that 5. That makes that 7, which makes that 5. This last digit has to be a 4. We have a 1, 7 pair here, which means this can't be 7, so this is a 1, which makes that a 7. This 1 eliminates that 1, so this is 8, which makes that a 1. This 6 eliminates that 6, so that's an 8, which makes that a 6. That's how you solve it. Pretty cool logic, actually. Very interesting restrictions that we had here. Um, yeah, just very interesting in general how this worked out. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this solve, and I'll see you next time on Frank Puzzles. Take care.